Hello everyone, welcome to the workshop, the GitHub shortcut, how to get hired without a perfect project. Well, before we start, let's do some ground rules. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat and message it so that I can see and I can respond to questions. This will also help me understand how you're feeling about it, whether you're understanding. So go ahead and do that. At the start, let's say hi in the chat so that I know you're there. Thank you. Yes, that's good. Yeah. And also tell me where you're from, which country you're from, or which city you're from. Oh, so that's Melbourne, uh, Toronto. That's good. Yeah. Thanks for putting it in the chat. Yeah. So I'm very excited about this workshop because this is something that I've learned over a period of time. I love to share this experience with you, and that's why I put this presentations out. So let's begin. So first of all, about me. Yeah. So just you might not know me. So my name is Tishit Devasya, and I have got 15 plus years of experience in software engineering. I started as a software tester, worked as performance testing, then performance engineering, and also did as DevOps. But that was some time ago. That was at that point of time, it was called as TechOps. And then at like around 10 or 12 years ago, I thought I was bored. I was already a lead and had a team under me and everything, but then I was bored with whatever I was doing. So I switched out and said that I will be a software developer. And then I started my journey as a software developer. And then that I worked pretty hard on it because it was a hard thing to do because I was up a ladder and I had to go down and then again come back. So that was a good journey. And one of the challenges that I faced every time was that it seems that when you started off as a developer, you had some kind of a insight from other mentors on how to do development. But when I switched, nobody told me. Even if I did not even know what to ask. So that was a challenge. And now what I'm trying to do is I'm helping other people make that switch and become a better software engineer. So that's where the goal I am doing. And so today I'm very excited about this particular project about how to showcase your GitHub without even a complete project. So let's dive in this one today. So before going in again, I thought I'll set up expectations. So things which are not covered in this workshop. One of the thing is how do we actually implement project in a structured approach. So that's something it's a learning skill, it's a different skill, but I'm not covering that. Then how do you track your projects? Like you have a lot of your projects and how do you track it to closure? How do you set up milestones? How do you put up deadlines around it? Then how do you showcase your structured development? Now, this is another important aspect of it. One is learning it, and the second part is how do you showcase that? The simple approach, but yeah, obviously I'll not cover that. And the last is how to organize your commits. Now, a lot of times what happens is either you have like hundreds of small commits, or sometimes it might not be, you might not have a single commit, nothing there, and then there's a one big commit where there are like 30, 40 file changes and so on. Or otherwise, there will be all single commits like test this, fix this, and so on. So those are the things. I mean, that is useful when you're working in an organization because you want a clean commit history. So it might not be relevant to this particular thing, but I thought I might just put that out for you guys. So the next thing that you have is before getting into this, I'll just check if there's somebody in the some questions or not. Yeah, all good. So the first question is like, why do we need a shortcut? Well, the first reason is that we have no projects in the first place. Maybe you're stuck in a scenario where you are learning new things, learning the data structures and algorithms, or doing those lead code problems. So you don't have a project, but that gives you a disadvantage because, like nowadays, even AI can do your lead code for you. So what's the difference between you and AI? So you need to have some kind of projects going on all the time. The next uh, thing is, yeah, the projects are always unfinished. I didn't realize that I'd gone ahead, but yeah, projects are always unfinished. Yeah, the project scope is always unlimited. You can go on adding new features and add on more things, and it's always unfinished. So you'd never know what all things should be there in a particular project where you can put that as an experience in your CV. Sometimes the project gets over in 1 month. Can you show that? Or sometimes it takes like 6 months, 1 year. Do you show that it took 1 year for you to do that? So those are the questions that makes it harder for you to put that as an experience on your resume. The next is AI. I briefly talked about AI being writing code. This is another problem that we have now is like the AI can write code for you. So other developers can write code for you. Some developers might use fully AI to the write code for you and showcase that they have done it. How do you compete against that? See, and how do you show that this is something that you have done? This is something that you have come out of your brain. This is your problem solving. How do you do that? Those are the problems that we are trying to tackle here in this particular workshop. So let's dive in. Now, what's the goal, right? When you look at the interview process, what's the goal for you at the end of the day? Your goal is to get a job. Now, if you to get a job, these are some of the skills you need to showcase to any interviewer, like whether you have problem solving skills, whether you have the technical competence, all the soft skills like can you articulate your thoughts, can you tell the specific reason why you have done it, and at the end of the day are you curious so that you are willing to learn all the time, are you open minded. There's some of the things. This is one of the biggest attribute that people look in developers is because what happens is like maybe 2 years, you have 3 years of experience and you have learned something very well. You're really a good developer, and then you stop. You think that you know everything. So are you willing to take on feedback? There's some of the skills that they're actually looking for when they are interviewing. So this is a goal that we are trying to aspire for. So what we are trying to do is use a shortcut so that we are able to showcase these skills so that you can get the job much easier. So any questions so far? Thanks. Let's go ahead. So how do we do this? How do we get into that skills and how do you, the idea is that you need to use your readme like a solution engineer. Now the question comes out around is what does solution engineers do actually? You know, it's a very generic term that's out there, but let's break it down. Solution engineers are the people who will talk with products or the business people and create use the requirements to create a solution. What do you mean by a solution? Solution is at a high level. How does the different systems are going to interact with each other so that they can achieve a particular requirement. Now, this can be a simple, one application talking to a database. That will be just two system solution where you'll have one, you expose an API, the API talks to a database, and it comes back, and then that's a solution for it. And then in that solution design, they will also talk about what are the parameters they are going to talk to. For example, what are the API specifications? How the user is going to call the API? What is the security on that API? What is the performance consideration on the API, what are the mandatory fields, what are the optional fields, and so on, all the related to API specs. Then it will also talk about the database table, what are the table it has to do it, and what are the table structure that it is going to create as part of this particular solution, and how at the end of the day, how the or this particular solution is going to help in achieving the requirement. So that's the design that they are building it. The thing is, this is all done on paper. So things that they might have additionally done, they would have done some kind of a proof of concept so that they can prove that this particular thing works. Now, this generally happens when they have to integrate with, say, third-party API. There's an API external to your organization. So you want to learn about it, try it out, test it out. So that's the work they would have done it. And then they would put all that learnings into that solution design so that the software developers or the actual developers are going to go ahead and implement it. Finally, these are all the technical specs. Apart from this, they will also add things like assumptions, things what they don't know or they would just assume, and the challenges that can happen and what are the future scope it might come in. For example, sometimes it helps the developer that what are the next things that might come into this picture. And then obviously if there are any risks to this solution, so for sometimes what happens is we know that the third party API is slower than expected, so they might say at a risk that this might affect user performance or user experience and so on. So these are things that a solution engineer does, and you can, and what we are trying to do is we want to create a readme where we incorporate all these things into the solution, into the readme, so that when people start looking at it, they will feel that the thought process that we are doing it. Now, I know this sounds very hard, but I'll give you a step by step approach so that you can actually go through it and implement it in much easier fashion. So let's go deeper into this. So the idea is that we need to create a README like a solution engineer. Now, what does solution engineer do? They build a solution on paper. Before beginning any project, they go and interact with the product owners or the business analyst, architecture to find out what the requirements are particular for the project, and then try to build a solution between the technical landscape that is present in that organization. So it might be a very simple thing, right? So you are creating an API. So for an API, they might have a application server which will be talking to a database. So there will, like, if they put in a diagram format, it would be just a two boxes saying this is application layer, talk to a database, that's it. But then they will start adding more details. They will add API specifications. They will add the API security details. What are the mandatory fields for the API? What are the optional fields? And how other users are going to use the API. And on the other side, for the database, they'll start adding the table schema or the table name, what are the primary key, whether it will be a NoSQL or it will be a relational, and so on. So they'll start adding all those details into it. And then how the application is going to call the database. So at that point of time, what happens is it has all the information for a developer to start working on this particular project. And then it will also have non-functional requirements, the risk, assumptions, some of the things the solution engineer might not know. They might just put in it as an assumption. And then the last bit is they might do a proof of concept. So for example, if they're integrating with a third party API, they might do proof of concept. They will go and uh, play around with that API, put in all those technical specification of that API, how do we integrate with the API, and so on and so forth. And what that also leads is they might put a risk saying, if a third party API is slow, they will say as a risk that as a third party API is slow, this might affect the user experience on that one. So this is what they do. And this is what we are going to incorporate into our README. So go next. Okay, I'll go to the README template. So I will to see my screen. I have the template. Yep. So this is a simple readme template, and the first thing that we want to do is the solution design. This is a place where we add a diagram to showcase a high level solution. So if you I've got another, show that, yeah. So you have this kind of an view so that it shows how the different systems are interacting with each other, and this gives a higher level view for people to understand what we are talking about and how things are going to happen. And then the next step is we highlight the high level requirements. So what are the requirements from a customer that can come through it. Now this is the interesting bit, features implemented. So uh, what you can do is you can actually create this readme before you start a project, and that's what solution engineers do. They just create this a whole document and they put all the details into it, and then they start implementing. So when you are doing it on your personal level, what you do is you do the same thing, you do everything, and then you start tracking your features implemented using this. You just go on adding new things as you start implementing. Same thing as I told, they will add assumptions which you can add it in, and they can add future enhancements. So things are like, if you have decided that you're going to build 10 features, you can add all of them in future enhancements, and then as you implement, it will just go back into this feature implemented section. So what that happens is, like, at any point of time you get a job interview and you want to talk about this project, and you can just go and talk about it. So your project is not finished because it has got some features to be enhanced, but you have some implementation, and then you can talk about those things. And then challenges, these are some of the technical challenges, and it's the same question that we'll have for people, that what are the challenges that you have been facing, and as you face a challenge, you start documenting the challenge in the readme, so that, yeah, same thing, you're always ready with the question. Then the design decision, this is something that when you would have selected a project and you're doing it, why you did a particular decision, right? Now there could be a scenario where you have taken a decision just because you wanted to learn something new, right? For example, you have always worked in a relational database, now you want to work with NoSQL. But you can, in that scenario, you can still put a justification that NoSQL has these benefits, and these are the this is the way these requirements can be achieved through NoSQL thing. And these are some of the standard steps for any README. Like you put installation steps and usage, where you talk about what are the steps, how to use it, what are the API endpoints, and so on. So this is a view where you can have this template, and then it will, so whenever a people look at it, they can get that understanding as to, what all the thoughts you're thinking, how did you arrive at this problem, and there will be a lot of questions as well, because they will start getting deeper into this project. And as they get deeper into project, it is helpful for you, because you have worked on this project, in and out of it, you will be easily able to talk about it. It will also demonstrate your technical competence, because they are going to ask questions on the projects that you have implemented, and so you will have that knowledge and the competence to showcase. So that's the high level template that you can use. Any questions?
No, thank you.
So some of the advantages with this approach is you can start a README project with just a README. So as I said, this is a pre-work that you do before you start a project. And what that does is it also gives you yourself a clarity as to what you're trying to achieve, and how are you going to implement it, what are the tech stacks you're going to do, what are the assumptions that you might have, what are the decisions you're taking, and so on. So you have a rough overview as to how you're going to develop that project, instead of blindly starting coding. A lot of people do that, and yeah, you get stuck into a lot of problems after that. The other importance is, like as I said, you can showcase it even if your project is not finished, because you have, as I said, you might have implemented two features and there are five in pending state, but you can still talk about those two features. And when you're talking about it, what it shows is your thought process, how you're solving the problem, why you're how you're doing things, and why you're doing things. These are things that they're actually looking for, and it is not something that an AI can do it, right? Because when they see the thought process, and when you see the questions, they will see that it's not an AI that has done it, you had done it. And that's a differentiator that can comes in. Just summarizing a key takeaways. So you design a README in such a way that you're going to teach other people about your project. So just think about it, like I talked about, like thinking like a solution engineer. Yes, you do that. But then if it feels very hard, one of the ways is you just think about that you're going to present it to a particular forum, and these are the steps. You want them to understand everything about it, so that they are, they get that details, and they are going to implement it in their project, like they are the developers and they are going to implement it. So having that perspective that you're going to teach them about this whole project, it gives you the insight into, like, what are the questions they might have, what are the things that I'm missing, and those kind of questions you have yourself. And that way that readme will become much better and more thorough. And the second step is obviously you practice presenting it, just so that again you're anticipating the questions that might come in, anticipating the doubts. And sometimes some of the patterns you might have, you might just check, do some research whether that particular pattern is valid, you're not doing some big bloopers around it, and so on. And the last bit is like, uh, focus on the why. And this is one of the most common question that might have, you might say I used a, say, Postgres database. They might ask you why. Or you are using a AWS Lambda. So why did you use a Lambda? And so those are the questions that they might come in. Obviously, there will be some questions of why didn't you try, say if you've done a Postgres, why did you not try a NoSQL? Those questions also you might have to answer. And there is a good chance that they might tell a tool or a technology that you might not have any idea of. So that's fair to say that you can say that I was not aware of it, and so that's why I had not considered it in my solution. But then obviously you can go back and review it if you can incorporate that. But that's and that will show your openness and curiosity that I talked about. So whenever you have something that you don't know that you could have incorporated in the solution, you can obviously say that yes, I have not considered that aspect. Thanks for pointing that out. So that's another aspect of using this readme, because now the whole interview gets centered on your project, and all the questions are on your project. So that's one other thing. Now there are some next steps, but before going that, do you mind filling a feedback form? Uh, I'll share the link in the chat. If you're on phone, you can do it. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Thanks. All right. And then, yeah, the next step is what I talked about that we are not covering this project. So, next steps are like how to actually implement a project in a structured approach. Now, this is something that most of us are not aware of it. Like they just go coding and then I do this, and then I will do this, I'll do this, and then just go on. So, you need to learn how to structure a particular project. The next one is how do you track the project? When you're doing a project, how are you going to track it? And then how do you showcase your structured project development approach? So yes, first you need to learn how to do a structured project. How do you track it? And then how do you show it? How do you showcase it in your interview? That this is how you did it. So they also understand that what is the way that you are going to use it. And the last bit is how do you organize your commits? That's another important thing that I talked about briefly. You need to know how to structure a commit, structure your commit so that it shows your organization skills. Because when you work in an enterprise organization, it's very important to ensure that you are not polluting the GitHub repo with all the unwanted commits. It becomes hard for people to revert commits and so on. So that's those are the next steps that you can have. And the last step is if you are if you want to more talk about this next step, just scan this QR code. We can go through this and how do we organize a particular steps, and then we can talk through this on a one-to-one basis so that you will have more clarity around this. So, any questions? All good. All right. Thanks for that. So, thank you for coming and joining the call. I've I'll send some details after this call. I'll also give some references that you can use and also the GitHub template so that you are able to use them for your in your projects and help you get the job that you're looking for. Thank you. See ya.